The president literally kissing and making up with the head of the European Union one day after criticizing the EU at a rally. It's just one example of the president and his team now trying to change the narrative on some of the most contentious issues out there, problems that they created. I have a great team here to help me break all of it down. But first, I want to explain what I'm talking about. We know that for the entire course of his presidency, Donald Trump has seemed to go out of his way to do exactly the opposite of what his critics want him to do. But maybe that's changing. Take trade. On Wednesday, the president went from slamming the EU to praising its leadership and declaring victory for averting a trade war. That's a huge change from 11 days ago.
I think the European Union is a foe, what they do to us in trade.
What the European Union is doing to us is incredible. How bad? We just want it to be a level playing field for our farmers, for our manufacturers, for everybody. And we also want a big beneficiary, frankly, to be the European Union.
Now, what did he actually accomplish? The president says the European Union agreed to buy more natural gas and soybeans from the United States. In exchange, he's promising to hold off on tariffs while the two sides talk. The more immediate victory may belong to the president's fellow Republicans, especially those in the Midwest, who are worried about the impact of his trade policy, but they do not want to risk alienating his base. Then there's the issue of election security. The president took a ton of criticism again from Republicans and Democrats for insisting that Russia wasn't targeting the U.S. That triggered a week-long series of walkbacks and clarifications, now culminating in this. President Trump chairing a full meeting of the National Security Council tomorrow to discuss, you guessed it, election security and Russian interference. And speaking of Russia, guess who got to try and clean up the president's massive mess after Helsinki? It was Secretary of State Mike Pompeo testifying in the Senate Wednesday and getting grilled by members of both parties. Listen.
Has the president told you what he and President Putin discussed in their 2-hour closed-door meeting in Helsinki?
Presidents have a prerogative to choose who's in meetings or not. I'm confident you've had private one-on-one meetings.
What is it that causes the president to purposely create distrust in these institutions and what we're doing?
Senator, I disagree with most of what you just said there.
Poor Mike Pompeo, North Korea, Helsinki. He's going to need a mop and a bucket when he goes around the Hill. The biggest question of the day, Pompeo tried to clear up any lingering questions about whether the president was on board with the consensus, which is Russia hacked the election. Attempted.
I want you to know President Trump has stated that he accepts our intelligence community's conclusion that Russia meddled in the 2016 election. He has a complete and proper understanding of what happened. I know. I briefed him on it for over a year.
He might understand it. He just doesn't tell anyone that. So why is all of this happening? Keep in mind, this Sunday will mark 100 days until the midterm elections, something that is certainly not lost on this president or his party.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.